All right, here we go. Where are we? Okay. And there. Sounds good. All right, we're going to be live. Just a moment. Let's check all our devices. Okay. I think we're going to be just fine, and we're going to be talking with attorney Stephanie Murphy coming up. Here we go. Okay, and there's that. Folks, we'll be out tonight. That was quite a scene in Cranston last night. No doubt. Let me just check who else. Let's see. No. Okay. There's that. Interesting. Oh, wow. All right. I believe we are good to go. Yep. Let's see. Okay, great. Lawn doctor. Folks, call lawn doctor. Look at that grass. Early in the season. NJD Lawn Care. Thank you, Roger. All right, folks, we're going to be starting. That was quite a scene last night. Obviously in Cranston. Someone said to me, I want to say hi also, just as I was wrapping up. Who was it? Cheryl came by. Yes. Cheryl, I was in her hood last night. Yep. Where was channel 10, 12, and 6? I'll tell you where they weren't. They weren't there. All right, we're going to be starting in just 4 minutes. Folks, again, no court today, but I'm going to start with a Karen Reed update. By the way, tomorrow is very exciting. Tomorrow is Friday. Tomorrow in the Reed trial, I could wait, but there's 2 times tomorrow that you can watch me on national platforms. Yeah, I could say it now. But someone did ask me about lawn care. First of all, lawn doctor. Folks, what part of best lawn ever guaranteed do you not understand? They have someone sent me an email. What's the phone number? Just go to lawndoctor.com. They're fantastic. And right now, jump on early spring crabgrass control, spring lime, late spring. That reminds me, I did hear the Watson Materials commercial. I say spring's around the corner. All right, that one needs to be updated. But best lawn ever. Listen, best lawn ever guaranteed online. Excuse me. Lawn. I get emotional talking about Lawn Doctor. Your best lawn ever guaranteed, and they do crabgrass control, time release fertilizer. They can take care of ticks and mosquitoes. Lawn Doctor. Now, who can take care of? Have you had a spring cleanup yet? No? JD Lawn Care and Tree Service. Call them. They're fantastic. 401-441-0154. So tomorrow, first of all, coming up, we're going to speak with attorney Stephanie Murphy. And we certainly have some legal stories that are in the news that we're going to touch on with her. I think that's her coming up. I have so much to post later. But tomorrow, I'm going to be on Fox Nation live tomorrow talking about the Karen Reed case, live on Fox Nation, of which Kate DiPietro was on last night. I didn't see it. We were in Cranston with that vehicle that I think that was the vehicle that was mentioned earlier with the be on the lookout and that the driver had a firearm. But tomorrow, 45 minutes. That's long. 45 minutes, 3 to 3:45. So we'll be live tomorrow, 1 to 2. And then I'll jump out of the courtroom, go live on Fox Nation, 3 to 3:45. And then tomorrow night, first time we're going to be on with Vinnie Politan on Court TV. We're going to be live from 9 to 10, full hour Court TV talking about the New England serial killer. Or if there is one, by the way. And we'll talk about that. I still, as I have said, I don't, it doesn't matter what I think. I haven't heard anything from police that they believe that there is, in fact, a serial killer. So that's tomorrow. We will do Road Patrol Live probably early, but then live on Court TV tomorrow night, 9 to 10, but live on Fox Nation from 3 to 3:45. There's no commercials. So we're going to talk. Okay. And at 1:06, folks, good afternoon. Yes, it is time. Now, day off from the Karen Reed trial. Day off from the Karen Reed trial. So we are back at the command center. Excuse me. I get emotional talking. No, a much needed day off, as a matter of fact. And it is nice out. Sun seems to be in and out, but it is definitely spring. This has actually been a very nice week. Weather-wise, next week, not so much. Folks, PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, they're open for the season. Tulips, hyacinthus, daffodils, hydrangeas in blue, white, and pink. They also have pansy flats, pansy bags, hangers and bowls, assorted colors. Look for them on Facebook, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, as someone that spends an awful lot of time at a courthouse, I come across a number of people that they don't realize, actually, not only during the courthouses. Remember, folks, Road Patrol Live is crime scenes in courthouses, crime scenes in courtrooms, actually. But the number of people you don't realize you may need a criminal defense attorney, but you do. Marin, Barrett, and Murphy, criminal defense lawyers, 50 years combined Rhode Island criminal defense experience. Your fight becomes their fight. Now, they have they're very active Facebook, Instagram, easy to find. You see, we're out, all different types of scenes. You can call them 401-228-8271. All right, let's bring her on. From Marin, Barrett, and Murphy Law Firm, it is, in fact, our friend Stephanie Murphy, who joins us this afternoon on the program. Stephanie, I want to start off. I have some questions about the Karen Reed trial, but I just want to start off. I know it's tough to follow it in and out every single day, but I'm just curious, any observations you've had of this week of this very high profile trial?
It's been really interesting to watch, John. So I've been keeping an eye on it. I know there's been some breaks in the testimony, kind of breaking up, the court appearances and stuff like that. But it seems to be moving rather slow, but at the same time, going to a lot of detail. And there's a lot of almost impeachment materials in terms of previous statements that can be used. So there's so much material in this case that it makes it, a very cumbersome process for each witness. Each time they testify, they've testified before. They've given statements to the police, everything like that. So there's so many details in this case, and every statement seems to be a little bit different. And defense attorneys are trying to use that to their advantage. And the prosecution's trying to show that they're consistent in their testimony. So it's been very interesting to watch.
How much do you think the jury, Stephanie, absorbs if you have one expert that says one thing, but then the defense seems to have an expert that contradicts what they're saying?
I think it really boils down to what the jury thinks about someone's credibility. I feel like jurors can make almost an instantaneous, kind of how we do on everyday life, a credibility determination based on, maybe even the unspoken word and stuff like that. So I think jurors really rely on their own, opinion of somebody and whether or not they find somebody more credible. And then also inconsistent statements that they may have made, inconsistent studies, video footage, anything. I think jurors really look for evidence that's from the scene. Jurors are always interested in DNA and video footage and body cam footage. So I think the credibility of an expert's not as important nowadays with all the video technology and everything like that as it was in the past.
Just one final question, Stephanie. I'm wondering if you also find it, people may not realize it, but boy, the cell phone and the cell phone data and how just people going about their everyday life and people, they're not separated from the cell phone. And we're watching in court, John O'Keefe and his cell phone tracking him. The cell phone even tracks the temperature of the phone. So the Commonwealth is arguing, well, he didn't go inside to a house because the temperature of the cell phone can drop. I'm just curious, more and more are you finding that cell phones and what can be achieved and pulled from a cell phone, it could be helpful to a defendant, and at the same time, it could hurt a defendant.
Yeah, absolutely. Cell phones kind of make or break your case, in all honesty. I've had clients where I've called in a cell phone expert, let's say in Providence and stuff like that. And, they come in and they basically testify it's not guilty phone dump, meaning that everything they found, does not put my client at the crime scene at all. Then you have others that have them to like the meter of where the crime occurred and stuff like that. So it's absolutely crazy. Like, even if you turn your cell phone off, where you were, where it pinged before, the messages you used before. Some people don't bring their phone, on when they go somewhere, but there's so much information in terms of text messages, who you communicated with, deleted messages, places you look up, addresses you look up. So even if you don't necessarily have your phone with you, there's a lot of information that can be used against you on your cell phone that you might not even think of from days, weeks, months before.
I know the case of Carbuncle Pond, and when we were in court, it was actually really fascinating and interesting to hear how state police were able to track, based on cell phones, from Brockton, Mass, where they picked her up, and then it's bouncing over cell towers as they're making their way through Rhode Island, as they stop at a convenience store, then to Coventry, and then they go by the state police headquarters. So you get an actual map. I also wanted to ask you, again, folks, it's attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, on Friday, the jury in the Karen Reed trial, they visited 34 Fairview in Canton, which is the homeowner where everyone had gathered. And last time they visited much later in the trial. I'm just curious, what do you take away or just been experience with when a jury is visiting the crime scene ultimately?
I think it's much more beneficial really for both sides if it's done sooner rather than later, so they get a lay of the land. If not, I would also worry that jurors would, although they're not allowed to, investigate on their own or take a look at things. But especially in the Karen Reed case, where you have witnesses testifying they didn't see anyone on the ground for such a long period of time, seeing where the body was, seeing where the road was, seeing where the driveway was, I think all of that is huge in this case. So I think it's actually good for both sides, in all honesty, that the view was done sooner rather than later, because everyone's trying to picture something. And when they don't have an actual view or photos only do so much, but an actual view will tell the distance. They also have to imagine it's snowing, it's the opposite weather right now. So I always think a view is always good if you're going to be, for the defense, arguing about how close the body was to the street and how it could have been seen, or the prosecution to say the opposite. So I think it's very important for the jury just to get a good baseline of where this happened.
Now, Stephanie, Saturday night, late in Johnston police are called. There's a disturbance at, a convenience store, gas station. When they arrive there, now in the aftermath, they've released the body cam footage, and folks, we're gonna have that posted a little bit later today. But Stephanie, we've learned that there was a suspect, there was some kind of dispute going on, and the individual in the car, the suspect, apparently had an outstanding warrant. Now you have footage, Johnston police body cam footage, and then you also have the convenience store footage, but you basically see the defendant who, my interpretation, he's probably panicked because he knows he has an outstanding warrant. They run his name, pick him up. He goes to leave, but as he's trying to leave, the Johnston police officer, was getting out of his vehicle and he scrapes up against him, knocks him down, and the Johnston police officer fires and strikes him, and then the suspect crashes across the street. I'm just curious, just tell me your thoughts a little bit on what happened in Johnston.
Well, I really think the body cam footage and the video surveillance kind of paints like the real picture of what happened. Without that footage, is kind of you have to kind of get to the officer's opinion of what was going on, where he was struck, why he felt in danger, and stuff like that. I mean, all firearm discharges of police officers are always investigated. So I know this is getting investigated, but I think the body cam footage really paints that kind of chaotic moment of a car coming at the officer, everything that happened afterwards. So it's not just the officer's opinion. You can kind of see what happened on the video, and you can see where the occupant's car was and where it was headed.
And just also, if you were to advise someone watching or listening, and the suspect in this case, this individual, I believe, many times there are people may not realize it, but they do run from police, and police don't chase the way they used to. Police officers have told me when they joined the force years ago, you were told you follow them and chase them until you run out of gas. Many times when we're out and doing police stuff, they call off the chase. In this particular situation, the individual maybe thought that he was just going to flee from the area because he had an outstanding warrant, but then look what the end result is, and the charges as a result of the fact he struck the officer, let alone just his physical condition, that then, I mean, he was shot.
Right. Instead of just addressing the warrant and dealing with what the warrant was, which typically isn't a big deal, it could be. But instead of confronting that and dealing with that, he made his life a lot worse for him. I think he has 5 or 6 felony misdemeanor complaints, felony assault, ADW. I mean, he is in a whole lot of trouble because of his actions afterwards. But I do agree with you, John. I think the police officers nowadays really take public safety into consideration. And this, you don't hear about the chases. You hear about, okay, like we'll get them later. It's not worth, the public safety being endangered. We know, right. we know who he is. We know the car, there's video surveillance. We'll get him later. But in this circumstance, this was his actions of trying to elude the police that kind of got him into this spot.
As you say, more often than not, even if there is a warrant, maybe it's a night in jail or maybe it's a whatever, but you get it out. It
could be a bench warrant, a failure to appear. It could be, a variety of different things. But I feel like you always make it worse for yourself by, not obeying the police and the law enforcement. You're going to get additional charges if you just don't do the right thing.
Folks, again, we're speaking with attorney Stephanie Murphy. And Stephanie, another high-profile case that seems to be coming to its conclusion. It got delayed a little bit because of some court matters. But I'm curious your thoughts on now it's the defense turn to put on their case regarding this Aaron Thomas and these so-called naked fat tests that were being conducted at North Kingstown High School.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see who the defense calls and stuff like that. I took a look and kind of listened and read some articles in terms of, who the prosecution called. And I know one of the last witnesses, I think the 19th witness, was a doctor basically saying it's never appropriate for, someone other than a medical professional to kind of do a fat test, especially with a naked child. But I still really think this case comes down to it might not have been appropriate, but was a crime committed? And also, you're also dealing with years and years ago, and we've come so far in terms of what people accept as, normal and what should be done, and everything like that. So I really do think this case still comes down to, the sexual gratification part of it. So I would be really interested to hear who the defense calls as experts, whether they, go against the experts the state called or whether they let it lie and just make arguments in closing against it. I'll be really interested to see if they call to rebut some of those experts.
Now, initially, Aaron Thomas, they were saying, John McDonald said they were going to put him on the stand. He was going to testify in his own defense. I'm not. I mean, I want your thought, but I'm not convinced they even need to do that at this point. Again, the whole thing, it does sound bizarre and creepy, but John McDonald, he's a great attorney. I think they may be able to make the argument. It's tough not being in the courtroom, but that whether or not an actual crime was committed.
I think that's one of the hardest decisions, as a defense attorney, to advise your client whether or not you take the stand. In my opinion, it's a last ditch effort. If I put my client on the stand, is trying to connect some holes that I'm unable to connect. But I think closing arguments are really, really powerful for the defense. And you get to, contradict experts and witnesses without the state being able to rebut them. So I don't know if they're both John and John are great attorneys. I don't know if they're just going to use closing arguments or if they're going to put their client on the stand. Ultimately, even if I was to advise my client, I don't advise you take the stand. Ultimately, it's a client's choice. So there's only so much advice you can do. But I typically always steer away from having my client take the stand in any trial, whether it's district court, superior court, especially in front of a jury. You never know if there's one word or one thing or one way he looks on the stand that a juror attaches. And for that reason, they might not have a good view of him. So I do think it's a last ditch effort for most attorneys, but it's also driven by the client and what they want.
Folks, again, it's attorney Stephanie Murphy. Now it's time for Murphy's Law or Stephanie's selection. And what story do you have for us this week,
So kind of what I've been following is, we do a lot of different sex crimes and stuff like that. So the new bill that was being introduced in terms of the AI generated images, like the fake porn and stuff like that, the deep fake images that were presented in October 2023 of a bunch of high school kids. The new bill that was introduced and everything like that makes it a crime now for you to generate and duplicate those AI images. So I find that fascinating, and I wonder how that's going to change state law down the road and stuff like that in terms of kind of images that aren't real, that are AI generated, but they're images that, rise to the level of child pornography. So I'm following that to kind of see the impact that it'll have on state charges. And like I said, we deal with a lot of different sex charges. So I'm interested to see on the state level how it impacts it and what changes are going to get made.
Before I let you go, I did get a message, social media, there were some people arrested in Newport, assaulting police. They actually reached out to me. I think they knew I was going to be talking to you, but nevertheless, here was the question. And again, I'll just let you answer it. They claim, and this is a family member, that if someone's out in a public, bar setting, whatever, if someone starts pushing them, whatever, self-defense, you have the right to defend yourself. Is there a situation legally that someone says the police officer pushed me, so therefore I had the right to essentially exchange blows with them?
I think those situations would be limited. I think it depends on whether or not the police identify themselves as police officers, if you're in uniform, if they're giving commands to back up and stuff like that. I mean, I always hope in any sort of arrest case that, like it doesn't ever rise to the level of violence, that if somebody's there being arrested, I think this was for a domestic arrest and there was other people around. But also if it's one officer and 4 or 5 people, kind of talking back to the officer, I think it depends on the situation, how the officer handles the situation. I think those times to ever put hands on anybody is very, very, limited and should be only done in a situation where you can't retreat and stuff like that we've talked about as self-defense. But I'm not that familiar. I've not seen any of the video footage in this case, but there are some times when you're pushed and you don't know if it's a police officer, or the police officer doesn't identify themselves or make a command, and it's just your gut reaction for self-defense. That could definitely be something that you could look into. I would definitely look into all different avenues, speak to all the witnesses, kind of get the feeling as the scene unfolded to what the officers were saying, how many officers there were. But I think it's a very specific circumstance situation. It really depends on what's going on at the scene.
I think what you also said, we'll just leave it, that people have to understand, first of all, this isn't a bar situation, and it's not just like a self-defense, but when an officer is outnumbered and it's a hostile crowd, I was at a scene in the off Manton Avenue, one of the housing projects, and because of the nature, the layout of it, in less than a minute, there were 60 people surrounding 2 police officers. Hey,
Right.
They get nervous. And so then, the cars are flying in, but it's just human emotion of like, oh my God, we're surrounded by this mob and they're coming at me. I mean, I would think better off than not to engage and try to get into a fight with police. And Stephanie, again, I want to stress, if someone finds themselves in a situation, folks, pick up the phone. Why not get some legal advice?
And sometimes the best advice in that situation in Newport is, deal with whether or not, the officer touched you inappropriately later on. Don't add to the fight. Don't get yourself charged in this situation. It's too bad that all these people are getting charged and there might be more arrests in this case. but you don't want to get yourself charged. There's ways to fight. There's ways to file a complaint, but without getting yourself charged with a criminal charge. So I would always recommend, not pursuing a fight if you don't have to.
Folks, attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, excellent job as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Great. Thanks, John. Bye.
Let's talk a little bit about that situation. And then we obviously have some other things in the news. Again, remember, Marin, Barrett, and Murphy, you can call them 401-228-8271. If you're watching or listening and you have a legal situation, if you call, you could say, hey, I heard you on the program. Make the phone call. Sometimes I get messages from people that are guessing. As far as the Newport situation, I don't know all the ins and outs, but I haven't seen someone win if they say, well, the police officer hit me first or pushed me first, so I felt I had a right to defend myself. Folks, on this Thursday, I want to remind you about Roof Co. Rhode Island. Now, there's been a lot of wind, and your roof might have some wind damage. Call them today. Free estimate, 401-868-7149. Think about the roof, no matter what the structure is, whether it's your home or business. If you have a faulty roof, number one, many times that can be the first thing that people notice, right, when they approach your business or home. But on top of that, if you have problems with your roof, it can cause all kinds of problems throughout your home. And maybe there is wind damage. You may not realize that you're insured and you could get covered for a new roof with wind damage. Maybe you have a leaky roof. That's very problematic. I'll tell you about a leaky roof. They don't just get better on their own. It's not one of those things that, 1 year we were getting a lot of water in and then suddenly we didn't. It normally doesn't go that way. Leaky roof, missing, lifted, or curled shingles, maybe granules in the gutter, that's a problem, or damaged chimney flashing. Roof Co. Rhode Island, happy to inspect your roof for wind damage and give you a free estimate. Now, it doesn't have to be wind damage. Maybe you're just thinking it's time you want to get a new roof. By the way, a new roof on a house, building, home can make a huge, huge difference. But you need to have it done by someone licensed, insured, a professional. Otherwise, if you have problems with your roof, roofing is nothing to skimp on. And you don't want to deal with someone that gets it right some of the time, or someday we're going to get this down. You want to deal with a licensed professional. You want to deal with Roof Co. Rhode Island, as an ROOF, Roof Co. Rhode Island. And you can call them. Call Joe, 401-868-7149. I talked to him. Joe said, Juan, we are ready to talk to and give free inspections for all of your listeners and followers. Folks, take them up on that. 401-868-7149. I share their Facebook page. Why not have someone just come out? Have Joe come out and look at your roof. Maybe he has some thoughts of what he could do. Or maybe he'll say, hey, you have a beautiful roof. No reason to do anything. But maybe there is flashing around the chimney that could be split or missing. Or maybe you don't even realize you have wind damage. Roof Co. Rhode Island, 401-868-7149. Now, staying on schedule, I want to just finish. That did happen. For those of you, people may or may not remember, we were off of Manton Avenue, and there's Salmon Street, and there's a housing project back there. And the thing about a housing project, a lot of people, I obviously spend a lot of time there. Chad Brown is a housing project. Hartford Avenue, housing project. Salmon Street, housing project. Very nice people live in all those places. There's a number of other, Woonsocket is a big housing project and so forth. But this particular one, there was 2 vehicles that had gunshot wounds connected to them. Bullet holes is what I should say. And so something had happened. And then, they were getting ready to leave the scene. And all of a sudden, someone in the crowd, so the police had really thinned out, and I was just getting ready to leave. And then all of a sudden, the police, either someone gave them a hard time or they may have found someone that they were looking for. I don't know exactly what happened, but suddenly they wanted to bring someone into custody. And then as a result of that, I mean, in less than 60 seconds, because a housing project, it's the way I describe it to people, it's like a dorm at a college. It's, it's the courtyard, and people can empty out. And in less than 60 seconds, it went from 5 to 8 people outside to there were more than 60 people outside, and they encircled myself, and then it was the Providence police. So they're radioing, we need some cars. But the crowd, the circle's getting smaller. And so when you have a situation like that, some people start to get even more aggressive towards the police and push or do various things. So, and it sounds like the situation in Newport, I don't know exactly what happened, but many times when we're out on road patrol, people remark how they feel, boy, that's a lot of police. But you never want to be in a situation where you're outnumbered. You never want to be in a situation where you have 4 police and you're dealing with a crowd of more than 10. They don't want a situation like that. They want to avoid a situation like that. Folks, let me stay on schedule. This portion of our program brought to you by Propane Plus. Call them all your heating and cooling needs. Propane Plus, 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359. Heating and cooling, call Propane Plus. For all your propane needs, heating and cooling, call Propane Plus, 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359, and always online at propaneplus.com. I want to just give you an update. So there's no trial today. There's no court with the Karen Reed trial. We'll be back in session tomorrow. And then I will be in the courtroom tomorrow and then also for next week. But I want to just recap a little bit. Now, what is unusual about this case is, well, there's a lot of things that are unusual about it, but there's a lot of people that got hooked on it by this narrative that was put out by the defense. But I'm telling you, the people that are in the courtroom, there's 2 worlds. There's the world inside the courtroom where they're judging evidence, and you have the jury, and then you have the people on the outside. And I'm telling you right now, for the people that are in the courtroom and the jury, the case is going along very well. I recognize, folks, in the people that believe the conspiracy, even though a lot of it's been eroded now. Last time around, they were saying she's framed. You don't hear that anymore. Last time around, they kept, trying to say that there was some conspiracy inside the house. There's less of that now. They seem to just be questioning exactly what happened. But even if, as someone that sits there, Jen McCabe has been a very damaging, very effective witness for the prosecutors, the Commonwealth, and I think just a very damaging witness for Karen Reed. And the way I almost look at this is, it's just different inside the courtroom. I hear a lot of people outside that are making big deals about things that are not a big deal inside the courtroom. And I was speaking with someone about this, and I said, it's kind of akin to, now I wasn't born at the time, but the debate that changed all debates, the debate that changed politics forever, was the 1960 debate between JFK and Richard Nixon. And I actually even interviewed Chris Matthews. He even wrote a book about it. And historians have said it was just such a dominating event. And what they took away from that, for better or worse, but it just forever changed politics. Those that listened to the debate on the radio thought that Nixon had actually won the debate. But if you watched it on television, Nixon was overcoming. He had been sick. He was tired. He had a cold. He was pale. He had baggy eyes. Kennedy went out early. He was tan. He was rested. He was polished. Anyone that watched the debate, JFK, Kennedy was just so much sharper. I believe some of that is playing out with the Karen Reed trial, because I see people pointing to, it's almost like if you're reading about something, it's much different if you watch the video, such as people on the outside are making a big deal that Alan Jackson got Jen McCabe to say she was less than truthful with the FBI. But in the courtroom, the letters FBI were never spoken. And that's just because there was an investigation going on. And then suddenly there was a federal investigation going on. And the witnesses were like, what is this? But my point is, as someone that was there watching it, it was very confusing to the jury. And I don't even think it was a big deal to the jury. I don't think it's one of those things that someone says, well, if she wasn't truthful to the FBI, then she wasn't truthful about anything. But you have to ask, well, what wasn't she truthful to the FBI about? They asked her, did you contact anyone when we showed up? And then she didn't tell everyone that she did. But the FBI didn't say that she had lied about evidence. The FBI didn't say they found her story not to be credible. There was no charges brought from the federal investigation. That's over. So my point is, outside people like, oh my God, the big headline is Jen McCabe. I'm telling you right now, they didn't even say the FBI. He just said a non-police agency from Canton and also non-state police. I'm telling you right, it did not resonate with the jury. The other thing is this whole business about this attorney, Robert Alisi's nicest guy, and I think he's the nicest guy in the world, but he's not resonating with the jury. Alan Jackson resonates with Alan Jackson is very gifted. It's a small courtroom. Hank Brennan has command of the courtroom. Alisi doesn't. And he's not alone, by the way. Adam Lally cross-examined, or actually, had someone on the stand and was doing direct exam, speaking to them and so forth, questioning. And Lally is not, I wouldn't call Lally gifted. He certainly knows the law, but I wouldn't say that he is, gifted. But it really stands out to me when you have very gifted people in the courtroom. And you do have in Alan Jackson and also Hank Brennan. When they get up, it's just, they just command so much attention. And so this business about Alisi, I just don't think he was that effective. It's a long trial. They start to forget stuff. There's all these people coming in. It's a lot to absorb. It's a lot to pay attention to. I bet these jurors are exhausted when they go home. And I think some things stand out more than others. And what I mean by that is, if you ever, maybe you sit down to watch a film, watch a movie, and you may have seen it years earlier, but then when you're watching it, you don't remember every scene. Back in January, I watched a marathon of Mad Men on AMC, and I watched every episode of Mad Men, and there were plenty of episodes. I kind of remember it, but I don't remember every scene and so forth, and I had watched it. It's like that with The Sopranos. Sometimes, clips of The Sopranos come on TikTok, and I watched every episode of The Sopranos, but sometimes when I'm watching some of these scenes, it's as if I watched it for the first time. So I think my point in that is, at the end of the trial, then they're not going to remember exactly everything. Not everything stands out. Certain things stand out. Certain things stand out. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Kids Club on the Pike. Now remember, Kids Club on the Pike, perfect for a birthday party venue, before and after school care, preschool. Kids Club on the Pike. But they also have summer camp. Reserve the spot for your children or grandchildren today at Kids Club on the Pike. They're right off of 295. They're right conveniently located, Cranston Johnston line. Kids Club on the Pike. You can call them at 401-443-5336. Call Kristen, 401-443-5336. At least reserve your spot for your child at Kids Club on the Pike. Maybe it's just for a week. Maybe it's for a month. Maybe it's for the whole summer. Kids Club on the Pike. Have options. Why not? I think the kids would enjoy it. Kids Club on the Pike. 401-443-5336. Now, in regards to last night, still working to get details, but I want to credit a member of our road patrol that picked up on that early in the night. If you remember, there was a vehicle, be on the lookout, that was issued out of Providence that they were looking for. In the vehicle they had in Cranston, of which we were live at, certainly seemed to resemble that. So and then there were Providence police there. So I believe that they were, I think that was the vehicle. I think that was potentially the vehicle that they were looking for. And the reason why they were treating the individual that way is just the fact that there was the report came over that there was a homicide. Excuse me, that there was a firearm. I'm reading something else. There was a firearm in the car, which is why then, folks, and police don't want to take any chances. Now the body cam video from the Johnston situation. I have it. It's in my possession. I will post it. But that to me, that I don't see how that officer is going to face charges. He's, reporting. This was Saturday night late, 11:30, somewhere around there, almost 12 o'clock. Between 11:30 and midnight, someone phoned in. There's a disturbance, male, female. They get there, and then the officer sees the individual in his car. He gets out, and then as the guy's fleeing, he does bump the officer, and then the Johnston police officer fired at him. But when he brushed him, he did knock the officer down. So yeah, I mean, you can't do that. But the individual, by the way, it could have been, he could have killed him, but the officer, he didn't kill him. But I don't, from what I've seen, that he's not going to face any type of penalty. So, but let me also just mention about the Karen Reed trial. So I think right now things can change. Cases can change when the defense gets a chance to put on their case. But as of right now, what do we know? We definitely know that Karen Reed was drinking. We definitely know John O'Keefe's body was found at the flagpole. We do know that she had a cracked taillight. And we've heard reports from more than one witness that she was acting like a lunatic. And just to put that in perspective, some people try to say, I'd be acting the same way if my husband or boyfriend didn't come home. Well, I don't, I mean, an adult would act that. I mean, at 12:30, they have a fight and she doesn't go into the party with him. At 4:30, she's waking up the niece and she's already out of her mind. So when they had been in Aruba, John O'Keefe and Karen Reed, they had a fight. He left her at the room and he went out drinking with his friends till 3:30 in the morning. I could see if it was 12 hours later, it's 12 noon, you still don't know where he is, or if it's 24 hours later. But why would you be saying he's dead? That it's not I'm telling you right now, it's not rational to call someone and say he's dead at 5 a.m. That's not rational. That's not people are trying to say that that's a normal reaction. That's not a normal reaction. And as other people have said, she didn't show up at the scene saying, what happened here? What happened to him? She showed up at the scene saying, I hit him. And other people have said, well, I could see you're so upset that you just start saying things. Well, so people, if you came home and you had a family member that was found shot to death in the kitchen, would you start saying, did I shoot them? I shot them. Did I shoot them? No, you'd call 911 and say, I just came home and my family member has been shot or something happened and they're in my kitchen. You wouldn't start saying, did I shoot them? I shot them. I mean, no, you wouldn't react that way. What would be the question? The question would be, what happened here? What happened? Let alone if you were home, left, and then came back home. So I think people underestimate that her behavior is not normal with the screaming and and she's acting like she knows that something very drastic has happened. That's my interpretation of it. And I think people can throw around terms. She's framed, she's innocent, blah, blah, blah. Her behavior is not rational. She hates Jen McCabe because if Jen McCabe is believable to the jury, then Karen Reed is cooked. So if the jury believes Jen McCabe, and they're sitting very close, Jen McCabe, remember, that's a small courtroom. When Jen McCabe is sitting here, the first juror is maybe 6 feet away, maybe 6 feet away. So maybe even a little less than that, actually. I described it to someone that how close is the jury to the witness? You know what? Thanksgiving, when everyone's passing the dishes around the table, here's some more potatoes for you. Who needs the cranberry? Pass me the gravy. Jen McCabe could pass the gravy to the juror sitting to her left. That's how close they are. And she is very calmly, just talking directly to the jury. We'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Arch Design Builders. Give them a call today, 401 207 4124. Arch Design Builders. Now, this is Ed and Roxanne. If you're listening or watching on this, it is a pleasant Thursday. Maybe you need a new kitchen. Maybe you're thinking of a new bathroom or a basement, or maybe a deck, or maybe you just want to have part of your home remodeled. Take a wall down here or there, open it up, whatever it may be. Arch Design Builders. You can take advantage. When you have a conversation with Ed and Roxanne, I am 100% confident you're going to say, let's do this. This is who I'm going with. They've hired people that it starts a small project, and then 3 years later, it's like, can you do this? Can you do that? How about do this for me? How about that? They build long-term relationships. But I'm inviting you to call them and at least just have a conversation. Show them the space. Call Roxanne, 401 218 9707. 401 218 9707. And also, listen, I've gotten to know them. They are tremendous. They're not only very gifted, but they're just tremendous people. Those two twin brothers that lost their parents that are now living with their grandfather. It was Ed and Roxanne that organized the big fundraiser for the twins and raised, a pretty good amount of money, a lot of money, as a matter of fact. But they do quality work, and they're quality individuals. Arch Design Builders, 401 218 9707. Now, we were speaking earlier with Dan McGowan, and I want to just touch on politics just a little bit. Gina Raimondo. So I covered Quina for 4 years as general treasurer, and then she was elected governor in 2014, and then she was reelected in 2018. 2014, she beat Cranston Mayor Alan Fung, and that was also the Cool Moose. And then in 2018, she had a little bit of help with Joe Trillo, who ran as an independent, who despised and hated Cranston Mayor Alan Fung. And then she leaves. She was endorsed by New York City, former mayor of New York, Mike Bloomberg. And Bloomberg donated a lot of money to the Democrat Party. I think like $100 million that he donated, raised, what have you. But one thing about Raimondi is she did not endorse Biden, and yet she was part of the Biden cabinet. So that's not an easy feat to get appointed to an administration that you weren't even on board with. But as much as, here's what stands out to me about Gina Raimondo is I'm not convinced she matches. I mean, there are people that just don't like her, and then there are people that love her. But I just, right now, it could change. But her whole method and strategy it's kind of dated, and she's not old. She's not an old person. She's in her 50s, but it's a very dated, she thought it was a big deal to get a segment on 60 Minutes. A fraction of people are watching 60 Minutes from what it used to be. I mean, 60 Minutes 40 years ago was a huge deal. 30 years ago was a huge deal. Maybe even 20, but I mean, it's still relevant, but it's not what it was. But when you have Bernie Sanders and AOC and everybody is just burn the place down and go to war with Trump and blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that's effective, but that's what she's up against. And I don't, I don't know. I mean, it's not a matter of intellect. You know what she also reminds me of is, and I've encountered and interviewed people like this. There's some people that run for office where they don't think of it as an election. They think of it as they're going for a job. And as a candidate, meaning a job candidate, they're the most qualified. And they almost come off as though, what's the point of even having an election? I'm the most qualified person for the job. But there's always an election. There's always an election. You know who was like that? Was Bill Bradley was like that. He ran for president in 2000 and he ran against Al Gore. And Bill Bradley, who was a highly regarded senator from New Jersey, former professional basketball player, phenomenal college basketball player, again, before my time, but Bill Bradley thought the whole shaking hands, raising money, meeting people, he kind of thought it was all just kind of like BS a little bit. He wasn't into it. And he thought we sit down and let's talk about things and I have the better intellect for the job. But that's not how elections are done. So I think Dan McGowan made really good points. Gina Raimondo seems to view this as, hey, listen, I went to Harvard. I went to Yale Law. I was a Rhodes Scholar. I'm the A student in the class. Therefore, I'm the person. It should be given to me. It does not work that way. You have to win. You got to win the election. You got to go to the people. How many rallies did President Trump do? President Trump spoke to the people. That's why he had the following. You had people, John Kasich, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, 2016. We're going to talk about foreign policy. We're going to do this way. Trump was doing the rallies. The rallies were a hit. They were talking foreign policy. Trump was talking about building a wall. Trump was talking about locking up Hillary. Who won the election? Folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by Serve Pro of Providence. So whether it is fire damage or water damage, storm recovery, fast, thorough, and professional, you can depend on Serve Pro of Providence. And remember, they're 24/7, 401-941-5500, 401-941-5500, Serve Pro of Providence. Well, folks, good afternoon. I also want to mention, since I mentioned them earlier, Watson Materials. I mean, when we see weather like this and it's May 1st, you think of the outside. Watson Materials, they offer the most complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island, is Watson Materials. And you can call Sean. This is who you want to do business with. That's what I try to do, is line you up with the type of people that you want to do business with. 401-885-0600, 401-885-0600 for Watson Materials. Well, we will definitely be active with Road Patrol Live later. Karen Reed trial is tomorrow. Obviously, we have some busy days ahead. And then also with, I'm pretty excited about some national platforms that we're going to be part of. Now, because of the retrial, I've not been able to capture as much of the naked fat test. I'm also seeing, so apparently an elderly woman was hit by a car in Warwick. It seems very, very serious. I didn't go to that, but that was right near Pilgrim, I think. And that's an odd one. Senator Whitehouse in the news because he took a trip. How about Sabina Matos? It's the job of illegals to kind of like keep Americans in line. I think that's an interesting way. I've never heard anyone talk about that. That's how that's the role of people that are new arrivals in the country. In Warwick, woman 80 years old taken to Rhode Island Hospital. 2 lanes of Warwick Avenue are currently closed. So I think it was at Warwick and Fowler Avenue. I'm not exact. I think that's near Pilgrim. I'm sure I have messages from people telling me about it, but that's what we're hearing. I know Let's see. Defense calls witnesses. Okay. Let me just check this as well. There we go. Okay. Let me stay on schedule. The retrial, folks. Let me just who's sending me messages? Okay. Oh yeah. All right. Big happenings, Warwick Avenue, Pilgrim Parkway, heavy police presence. Now, yeah, it was an accident. Um, no, that when you see that, that is true, heavy police presence, but what the person is leaving out is heavy police presence along with rescue. So I'm not saying it's not serious, but it's a pedestrian strike. Very, very. We're not going to that, but that's interesting to me. Last night, that was heavy police presence in Cranston. Cranston was on Dean Parkway. That was a heavy police presence. That we're interested in, but heavy police presence. Well, right, and also heavy in a rescue because someone was struck. So I'm glad. Not a lot to see there. And again, it's one thing we're out at night and they close the roads, but not so much during the day. All right, let me stay on schedule here. And folks, remember quality asphalt seal coating. I want to thank Lynn. Lynn let me know that she sent me an email. Who is that company that you mentioned? We would like to get our basketball court resurfaced. Lynn, contact Quality Asphalt Seal Coating, 401 283 9815. Call Corey. They have a great social media presence. Quality Asphalt Seal Coating, 401 283 9815. They seal coat driveways and parking lots, crack filling. They can make your pavement look like new. And they could resurface tennis court, basketball court, pickleball court, sports court. They also epoxy garages and patios, decorative concrete flooring. Give them a call, free estimate, Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Also, line striping and epoxy, 401 283 9815. As I mentioned, they have a very impressive social media presence. You're going to love Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. So we touched on Tina. I think I also want to just double check. I thought I saw that the Valley Breeze had an update, I think, give them credit, regarding Pawtucket Fire Chief, staffing adequate for full response. Yep. Recent retirements and terminations of certain firefighters have not impacted any one fire station in the city. Vacancy has been filled with minimum amount of overtime. Down 8 firefighters after 8 department members resigned or were fired amidst an investigation into alleged criminal activities. The Pawtucket Fire Department is now at 129 firefighters plus 1 chief and an assistant chief. So that's 131 members. That's more than enough to cover all shifts for fire and EMS service. They have an annual budget of 145, but sure seems like they can get by on that. So asked for an update on the investigation. The spokesperson said the matter's in the hands of the Attorney General's office. City representatives have alleged atrocious behavior on the part of 8 department members who either fired or retired. Pawtucket Firefighters Local previously released statements saying 4 were fired without just cause, and all 4 had impeccable service records. Union reps have said they'll defend the firefighters through arbitration, but the labor attorney said he'd never seen the extent of behavior displayed by the firefighters. Comments that drew sharp rebuke from union leadership. So Valley Breeze, they've had good reporting on that. Again, as we have talked about, this was related to not only selling drugs, but using drugs, or however you want to phrase it. It's not just using drugs while on duty, but selling drugs. I heard it's a very active investigation. Very active investigation. I'm probably going to be doing an update on that. I do have some new information about it. And there's one big resignation that drew a lot of attention with the Pawtucket situation. And the reason why you haven't heard a lot about it, I think you're going to learn more about it when they bring criminal charges. I don't know. We're not talking, as far as I know, we're not talking life in prison here. But when you have a situation where someone is working as an active first responder, and then they learn that they also just happen to be not only smoking weed but selling it, that people could actually contact a fire station and say, like, what's for sale, and get a menu. That's problematic. All right, folks, listen, we've made it to May. Thank you for tuning in. I just want to thank Roger. What has been very good, flawless week. If you listen to the radio, stay tuned for the 2:00 news. Everyone else, we'll see you later tonight on Road Patrol Live.